Sabu, as usual, I'm grateful to you for giving me an opportunity to speak on issues of national interest. And today's talk is on strategic reserves maintained by India. What are the strategic reserves and how much are strategic reserves? I will try to explain this. But before I go to the presentation, I want to tell you every country is worried about how much reserves they keep. Just like you and me are worried about how much reserves we will keep, maybe by way of finance, maybe by way of property, maybe by way of our other resources. Every country is worried about the resources it can keep as reserves. But let's look at 3-4 things which happened in the last 4 or 5 years. When COVID came, we all got worried about vaccine. How will you get the vaccine? Some countries refused to give the vaccine to other countries because they said we should keep the vaccine for first dose, second dose. So we can't spare it for other countries. Of course, India gave vaccines to many countries. That's a different topic. But when there was a medical emergency, when there was a pandemic, shortage of vaccine was a big issue for many countries. Second, I'll take an example of what happened in the Russia-Ukraine war. It's been going on for the last couple of years now. So let me tell about one particular incident. As a part of the military action in this war, the gas pipeline feeding to Germany was blasted. And this caused abruption to flow of gas to Germany, which is desperately requiring this gas for their energy, for their heating purposes, for their power generation purposes, and many other industries. What happened? They had to buy gas from somewhere else, and the cost of LNG shot up in the international market, causing a lot of problems to many countries, including India, because of this particular event which happened. Whether it was an accident or whether it was as a military action, that's a different issue. But there was a crisis. Russia-Ukraine war, with Ukraine coming under a lot of military action, wheat production dropped. There was so much of shortage of wheat in the international market. India stepped in a little bit and gave a lot of wheat from our resources. But the fact is, geopolitical issues, natural disasters, all this can cause problems, or even a pandemic can cause a lot of problems. And every country needs to have some resources as reserves to meet such situation. With this background, I'm going to focus on India and give what are the reserves which India keep to tackle major issues. So can I upload my presentation, Sabu? Okay, can you see my presentation now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, right. Right. So I'm going to say that India's strategic reserves are expanding in quantity and expanding in variety. We'll talk about it as we go along. So let me come to the first slide, introduction. As I mentioned, every country would like to keep some reserves for geopolitical issues or supply chain risks. Imagine if Suez Canal is blocked for some reason and the ships had to come around South Africa, there'll be holdups, delays in trade, in ships coming and going. This can cause problems in supply chain. It can become an issue. Similarly, it can happen in Panama Canal as well. So countries have to cater for such exigencies in not only geopolitical issues, but also in supply chain, be it for medicines, be it for water, be it for other commodities. India also has prepared and kept some strategic reserves. Normally, countries keep in two types of reserves. One is called buffer stock and other is called reserves. And there's a difference between buffer stock and reserve. I will just highlight what is the difference. Buffer stock, which we have heard, wheat buffer stock, rice buffer stock, medicines, how much we should stock in hospitals. I will touch upon this a little later. Fertilizer, all these are ready to use items that can be immediately issued to the user, be it grains, be it medicines, be it water, be it fertilizer to farmers. They're ready to use. If you have such commodities kept in large quantities in various places, then it is called buffer stock. But if it's a raw material, especially imported, it could be domestic as well. If it is a raw material which requires further processing, then it is called strategic reserve. That means you take it from the strategic reserve and thereafter convert it to whatever form you want and then utilize it. Some conversion may take time, some conversion may not take time, and we will see this as we go along. So there's a difference between buffer stock and reserves. India has catered for 3 strategic reserves, 3 products in strategic reserves, and they're planning the 4th one. So I will touch upon this in this order. Let me go to the first one. The first strategic reserve we have is crude oil. India's crude oil is stored in different places. Refineries keep some stock with them, crude oil. There are about 20 plus refineries in India. So they all keep stock with them for running the refinery for, let us say, 2 weeks. They keep stock with them within their premises. But the government keeps stock in some other place, which I will show in the map. Government keeps stock in Mangalore, Visakhapatnam. They have reserves at this point of time, and a third place called Padur, which is also in Karnataka. These stocks are in huge caverns or between 2 hills where there is an opening there or there's a depression there. They fill up that place with concrete, make a big tank, and inside that there are many small tanks. They're all filled with crude oil and kept. So India keeps stock in Mangalore, Vizag, and Padur. I'm not giving any official secret. It is from the public media. I'm giving you those details. And this stock, which amounts to 5.3 million tons of crude oil, is enough for 10 days use by India. So India's requirement of 10 days petroleum and diesel in the form of crude oil is kept in this. So if you want to keep crude oil in a cavern, which is in the gap between 2 hills, then obviously it has to be nearby a port. Then only from port, from the ship, it can be transferred to the cavern. To the cavern, you can have a pipeline from the port. You can't keep filling it by tankers. It will take a long time. So they have selected the caverns in such a way that they can get filled from ship by a pipeline to the cavern. And when you want to use it, there's another pipeline which takes to a refinery. So you should have both port and refinery as close as possible to the caverns. So the places are Mangalore, Padur, and Visakhapatnam. Now they are expanding to another location in Padur, is in Karnataka, and the 5th place in Chandikol in Orissa. These two are not yet ready. They are under construction. And when they are completed, they will stock more crude oil than the first three. So we will have 5 strategic reserve locations for crude oil in India, all amounting to about 23 days of fuel requirement for the whole of India. Of course, when the situation comes that, then there could be many other administrative action to reduce the consumption of fuel. But at any point of time, India would stock up about 23 days of fuel in these places. In addition, refineries keep their own stock. So let me go through some more details on this. I've told you the locations had been near a port and a refinery. The first phase, which is already operational, is 5.33 million tons. The second one, which is not yet ready, under construction, is 6.5 million tons. In addition, if there are any future requirement of caverns, the government is thinking of setting up these caverns near Rajasthan. They're called salt caverns. That means you line up the caverns with salt deposit, which will not deteriorate the quality of crude oil, or it will get mixed with the mud. So these are the future technologies which they are planning as far as storing of crude oil is concerned. And all the sites are managed by a PSU called Strategic Petroleum Reserves Limited, which was set up in 2004. So in 2004, this PSU was set up. 2016, the first 3 caverns came, and the next 2 caverns will come up by, let us say, 2025 or 26. If you look at how much is India stocking, please look at this. Visakhapatnam, Mangalore, Padur, Phase 1, Chandikol, etc. When you add up all this, India will have 23 days of stock available. In addition, our refineries keep about 64 days of stock. So both put together, we'll have about 87 days of stock available in the country. So what happens to this once you fill up a cavern? Once you fill up a cavern, I told you there are many tanks there. Depending upon when you filled up, they will empty out one, use it, and fill up one. So that all the time you have crude oil there, which is recently filled. Some protocol is followed to make sure that it is not once filled and forgotten about and seen after many years. So you keep refreshing the stock by way of its life. If you compare India's stock, now please remember this slide on the left, my left, your right, is in barrels. Don't confuse with million tons. So there's a difference between barrels and million tons. So India keeps only 38 million barrels as stock in these places. But look at USA, look at Japan, Korea, China, they all stock much more than us. We are able to stock only this much, and definitely more requirement may come as our economy grows, and then they may have salt caverns in Rajasthan. So there's an international rule. It's not a rule, it's a policy, a guideline. Please keep 90 days reserve in your country. As per International Energy Agency, they have advised all countries, keep 90 days of crude oil in your country to meet any exigencies which can happen. Like it happened in Gulf War, there was a huge problem at that time. Or if Suez Canal gets closed, we may not get affected, we'll get from Middle East this side. But many other countries which are taking through Suez Canal, they will have a problem. So all countries are advised to keep 90 days. When we set up Chandikol and Padur Phase 2, we will have 87.5 days of fuel, which is very close to 90. So this is the strategic reserve we keep for crude oil. Now let's go to Next strategic reserve, second one, foreign exchange. I'm sure many of you are familiar with how foreign exchange reserves are kept. Notwithstanding that, I will just briefly highlight it. Our strategic reserve for foreign exchange at this point of time is 648 billion as of 2-3 days back. It was 646 in March. It has become 648 now. And India's foreign exchange reserve, how do they keep it? Where do they keep it? The foreign exchange reserve is kept essentially to cater for any urgencies to liquidate our liabilities of our institutions, as well as to give confidence in the nation's economy. When you have a good foreign exchange reserve, it is the health of your economy, and you have enough money available as reserve to draw from it in case of any emergency, in case of any urgent procurement, in case of any expenditure which we are not anticipated earlier, etc. Conventionally, foreign exchange means only foreign currencies. That means let us say you got 650 billion, so you will keep some in dollars, some in pounds, some in euro, some in yen, in different places. And if you add it all together, it will come to your total foreign exchange. But this convention has changed in the last few years. Now, foreign exchange is not only different currencies, but also gold. Gold is also added to it. So when I say 648 billion is the forex, it includes gold. Also, it includes what you can draw from IMF, which is called special drawing rights for the country. Depending upon your economy, your economical strength, IMF tells you, you can draw so much from us. Don't worry, we will give you so much. When you are fragile 5 economy 10 years back, this SDR comes down. They know your economy is not good, so they won't give you too much of loan. So this IMF loan, which is called special drawing rights, is also higher because our reserves are high. And also, we position some reserve on India's name in IMF. That is the way we contribute to IMF as a member. We keep some money there. All this put together is FOREX, which is 648 billion now. The 648 billion dollars which we have today, all of them are not in dollars. Some are in pounds, some are euros, yen, etc. But equivalent is 648 billion, gold, etc. We are 4th in the world now. First is China. You can see the graph. Japan, Switzerland, India, Russia, Taiwan. This is a sequence in which it goes. So we have really come up the ladder as far as foreign exchange reserves are concerned. Now, this foreign exchange reserve, which I talked about, is 640 now. India ranks 4th, and it is broken down in foreign currency is 568, 51 is gold, special drawing rights is 18, and as I told you, IMF portion is 4. If you add up all this, you'll get about 640. So, the Reserve Bank of India maintains a mix of foreign currency, gold, etc., and to make sure that we are having this forex in different currencies, as well as I told you, gold, also against what IMF loan is there. So this is the second reserve which is maintained. And economists look at these reserves with great interest, because that gives how much foreign money is flowing into India and how good is the economy in the eyes of people who want to invest in India. So it's a very important figure. Now I come to the third one, which is the strategic reserve of gold. India is 9th in the quantity of gold we have. You can see the map. America is 1st, and it goes on Germany, Italy, China, etc. And India is 9th, and I'll give you the detail, how much it is. India's quantity of gold is about 822 tons, and some are kept in India in a city called you ask this question, I'll tell you where it is kept. The gold is kept in India, and the balance some is kept in London. Uh, and there's a story to it which I will tell you why it is kept in London. USA has got the highest at 8,000 plus tons of gold. Germany is far below 4,000, and you can see the map for further details. So gold reserves are part of Forex. I told you some time back. Earlier it was not. Now gold is a part of foreign exchange reserves. And anyway, India's gold mines are completely depleted. So there is no gold below the ground in India. Well, some few quantities are there, some in Kolar, some in Gujarat somewhere, but that's all around about 70 tons. So it is as good as very little reserves are there which are still lying under the ground. It will not consider that. It is only the gold which is kept in the gold vault in India, as well as some gold we are keeping in London. And there's another dimension to India's gold. A lot of gold is available with Sabu, with Sri Kumar, with Hariharan. Hariharan may not have much now, with Kannan, etc. I'll talk more about it. You look at this graph. World Gold Council estimates India has 25,000 tons of gold amongst Indian families. 25,000 tons of gold. And this is based on their study. How much gold has come to India, how much could have been smuggled into India, how much sales have taken place in India. And this is more than reserve of USA, plus Germany, plus Italy, plus France, plus Russia, plus China, etc., etc. So there's a huge wealth lying with Indian families, which of course is not available to government for any requirement, but there's an inherent strength in our society, amongst our families, to keep gold. So sometime back I told you, countries keep reserves. Individuals also keep reserves. Individuals keep reserves in the form of gold, keeping some 10 sovereigns, 50 sovereigns, 100 sovereigns, depending upon their status. They keep, that is their fallback in case there's an emergency. So India's gold reserve of 25,000 tons, which is lying all over, distributed amongst Indian families, is a great strength, which we can be proud of, but it is not directly accessible for any productive requirement. And I've told you, it is more than the reserves of all other countries. So the gold reserve, why is it so critical? If you recall, and many of you may be knowing the story, in 91, after the Gulf War, when petroleum prices had shot up, India did not have money to buy crude oil. And India had to mortgage gold in some banks abroad. Bank of England, Bank of Japan, Bank of Switzerland. Gold was flown out of India. Dr. Manmohan Singh was the finance minister then. It was a desperate effort to convert it against that gold and get dollars from IMF. IMF refused to give India money. And in 91, just for $2.2 billion, we had to send gold by aeroplane to Bank of Japan, Bank of England, and Bank of Switzerland. 47 tons went to Bank of England and Bank of Japan, and for $600 million, and 20 tons went to the Switzerland Bank. Altogether, about 67 tons of gold were sent. And after some time, we got back the gold, but we didn't take back the gold from Bank of England. We left it there. We left it there saying we'll bring it later. So sometime back I told you, our gold is lying in India as well as Bank of England. That what we took to Bank of England earlier, we have not brought it back yet. It is kept there on our name. And there are more details to be shared on this particular issue. I don't have the full details on it. I'll request Hari to amplify this in the Q&A session. What happened in 91? He was a very practicing senior bank officer at that time, and he will have more details on what happened in 91. Why did India have to do this desperate one? So that finishes the third reserve, which we are talking about. First was crude oil in 3 cupboards, going to be expanded to 5. Second was Forex, which is around $640 billion, kept in the form of money, gold, etc. Third is gold, kept in India and some in Bank of England in London. Now, I'm coming to the fourth one, which is being planned by India. India is planning a strategic reserve of LNG. Why? Why should they plan LNG? LNG prices have shot up so much after the pipeline broke near Germany. And even today, LNG prices are very, very high. If you look at India's LNG network, you can see this. These are pipelines running from East Coast to West Coast. And you can see some red dots and blue dots and yellow dots. India has got about 9 LNG terminals which are on the coast. Ships come with LNG from abroad and unload there. I should tell you, LNG is liquid or liquefied natural gas. It comes as liquid. It comes to Cochin also. It has to be converted to gas first through a gasification unit. Liquid is converted to gas, and thereafter it goes by pipeline to various users, be it for FACT or be it to some other place, Bangalore, etc. It goes by a pipeline from various ports, and where you want to send it in liquid only, then you send by tankers. You very often see tankers carrying liquid nitrogen gas. They carry directly from the storage tank in the port. So India's LNG consumption is around 66 billion cubic meter. Half of it, roughly, 55% is imported and 45% is domestic. Some domestic production is on land. Most of it is offshore. Now, the PSU which is in charge of this is GAIL, Gas Authority of India Limited. They distribute this LNG to fertilizer plants, power plants, industrial units, etc., etc. And it is expected LNG will be required to produce a huge amount of power, 25 gigawatts of power by 2030. Why? LNG does not emit carbon as much as coal. It does emit carbon dioxide, but LNG is preferred. But LNG is costly. Coal is cheap. So you may have cheap coal, but you cannot use it because there is a limit to which you can emit carbon dioxide. So you have to use LNG. And please also remember, we discussed this in an earlier talk as well, that the reserves which are there for LNG is only in GAIL in the various units of GAIL in tanks and pipelines, etc. Very small quantity. It is 1/30th of our annual requirement. So there is no strategic reserve at the moment for LNG in India. But government is thinking of setting up a strategic reserve for LNG, primarily because LNG is going to be the fuel for tomorrow and not diesel for ships, not coal. There are many ships which are running on LNG these days, and all ships in future will be running on LNG. All public transport are already running on natural gas, which is not liquefied, but compressed natural gas, CNG. CNG and LNG are 2 forms of natural gas. One is made liquid, other is just compressed as a gas. So CNG will be required for public transports. LNG will be required for ships. So LNG demand will go go up in the world, and therefore we have to tune our economy to have LNG in future. Now, government has constituted a committee to study this project and say, where are we going to have this LNG reserve? Obviously, it has to be very close to a receiving station. We already got 9 stations, 9 terminals. It'll be somewhere where a huge tank can be created. Such facilities exist in China, Taiwan, South Korea, etc. Japan also has got. And it is expected that they will use old, depleted hydrocarbon wells in which they will create gas-tight volume and store natural gas either as liquefied or compressed gas. This detail will come out after this committee finalizes, which is expected to finalize its report next year. And initially, the capacity is expected to be 4 billion at a cost of, I think, 15,000 crores. And India will start reserving LNG in 1 or 2 places. But why LNG is important? As I told you, the future economy is going to be tuned to LNG, and we've got a huge reserve of LNG in the ocean in the form of a hydrate. It is under the sea, and we got huge reserves of LNG next to USA. World's number 2 we will be. But how to take it out, nobody is sure. But it is there. So one day, scientists will find out a method of taking it out. And when they take it out, we have to make sure the LNG, which is going to come from the bottom of the sea, underneath the continental shelf, it is underneath the continental shelf. From there, you have to bring it out. It has to get stored on land because huge quantities will come from there. So I think it's a right decision, right direction which government is going. Start creating a strategic reserve for LNG. So that is the 4th one, which is yet to be finalized. So I have finished with the 3 reserves as well as the 4th one, which is under planning. But I think there should be one more reserve, and I'm going to talk about it. Minerals. Government has identified 30 minerals as strategic in December 23, about 5 months back. They said these are the 30 minerals which are very important to the country. It includes those minerals required for semiconductors. You know, semiconductor industry has started. Those required for nuclear power, those required for renewable energy, etc., etc. So, at the moment, minerals have been listed out to be critical, but we don't have a strategic reserve. And this includes atomic minerals also. Many of you are aware of the fact that India's 23 nuclear power plants don't have enough uranium. We are dependent on uranium to come from abroad. And we are starving our nuclear power plants because uranium is not available in the country and depends only on imports. And our technological pursuit to run power plants using thorium has not yet succeeded. Much in anticipation, Kerala government has declared they'll have a thorium nuclear power plant in Kerala. But the technology itself is not fully proven. The trials are still going on in Kalpakkam. It's called Bhavini. That Bhavini power plant is still not proved. So maybe it will get proved next year or a year later. And when that gets proved, then we can have some comfort that we have thorium and we can run power plants with thorium. We are not so much worried about uranium. But all the 23 power plants we have today in India run on uranium and cannot be changed over to thorium. They have to run on uranium only. So it may be a good idea for creating some reserves. Why I'm saying this is, USA with 11 other countries has recently formed a strategic alliance. It's called US plus 11, saying within our group of 11, India is not in that. 11, we will exchange minerals. We will not sell minerals to a person who is not a part of this alliance, or we will not allow export to a country who is having a different international position. So in the year to come, by next year or a year later, you will find a lot of domestic laws and policies coming on a curtailing export of minerals, which may affect us. On top of it, uranium is controlled by nuclear supplier group. It's not so easily available. You have to give a lot of conditions that you will not enrich it. So there is a need for us to stock some minerals which are required for semiconductors, for nuclear power, for renewable energy, batteries for EV. You're aware, lithium, cobalt, all these are required, and we have to import. So it may be a good idea for India to form a policy where reserves will be created. At the moment, they have already created the policy. Only public sector units will do rare earth and atomic minerals and offshore minerals, while private sector will do the remaining. They can do manganese and coal and ferrous and nickel, copper, etc. But public sector only will do the most strategic minerals. And in my understanding, a time will come in the next 2-3 years that India will create a strategic reserve for a few minerals which are required for our ongoing requirement of semiconductor factories, nuclear power plants, and to sustain the battery production for electric vehicles, etc. So today it's only buffer stock. PARC or some atomic energy department keeps a buffer stock as uranium, but they have to shift from buffer stock to reserve in a few years' time. So that is what I think should happen. So I come to the conclusions of my study. Countries create strategic reserves and buffer stock. India has got 3 reserves. I already told you: crude oil, gold, and FOREX. LNG is under planning, which is the 4th one. I think minerals should also get into this bracket very soon. And for other essential items, food grains, there's a lot of buffer stock maintained. Food Corporation of India keeps. Medicines, the central government has issued a list by which each state is supposed to give so many medicines. Buy and keep. So it is buffer stock that is supposed to do it. And similarly for fertilizers, etc., etc. So the use of this buffer stock is controlled by some policies. How much can you export? How much more you will import? What's the distribution policy, etc. So as far as buffer stock is concerned, it is controlled by administrative action by the government. But all said and done, our strategic reserves have been growing. You have seen how it is growing for crude oil, how it has grown for foreign exchange, how it has grown for gold, and this has served well in shoring up our growing economy. With this, I come to the conclusion that India's strategic reserves are expanding to the betterment of our economy, which is poised to become number 3 in the world. We're already number 5. In another 4-5 years' time, we will become number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Jai Hind.